Under the tropical seas of our planet lies one of the most complicated and beautiful worlds ever created, coral reefs. Coral reefs only cover 1/10 of 1% of the Earth's surface, yet they are the most productive of all marine environments, home to more than 1/4 of all known fish species. A coral reef reminds one of an underwater city, where the main structures of the corals, the buildings, are built by tiny soft-bodied animals called polyps, no bigger than a baby's finger. Because their bodies are so delicate, these polyps build hard protective tubes around themselves, very much like a beehive. Reef building occurs mainly at night, because most corals are nocturnal eaters. The polyps stretch their tentacles out into the darkness, straining plankton from the currents. Many of these structures, built by the same type of animal, placed side by side, make up a hard coral head. Many of these coral heads form a reef. But to build a coral head is not as easy as putting up a building. Reef-building corals grow very slowly, adding only about 1 centimetre to the structure each year, making the formation of a coral reef a very slow and long process which takes many thousands of years. A human standing on the corals of the reef actually crushes hundreds of tiny polyps. People can destroy thousands of years of work just by breaking off a piece to take home as a souvenir. Coral reefs are home to much more than just the coral polyps. Thousands of fish survive for their entire life without ever leaving the coral reef. They find shelter among the hard structures of the corals. Like mountains on land, a coral reef draws many ecosystems, fish and invertebrates together. Some are vegetarian, the gardeners of the coral reef, keeping the crop of algae that grows on the corals down to manageable size so that it doesn't suffocate the corals. The carnivores of the reef have specially adapted mouths to suit their style of eating. The long-nosed butterfly fish uses its snout to probe into small holes in search of worms and even coral polyps. The parrotfish's teeth are fused into a single plate resembling a parrot's beak. It uses this to nibble and scrape on the hard corals to get to the soft polyps inside. It swallows the whole lot, digests the tiny animal and excretes the skeleton as soft white sand. For every acre of reef, a ton of coral is consumed and recycled to the sandy bottom every year. Although the parrotfish destroy the corals, they are part of a natural cycle. Their tiny mouths could never do the damage that an anchor thrown carelessly on the reef could cause. Life on a coral reef is all about living in harmony. Every fish and invertebrate has its place and function, a perfect symbiosis. The best example of symbiotic living on the reef is the relationship between the anemone and the clownfish. The anemone is a flower-like animal with an armory of stinging tentacles, which it uses to immobilize its prey, from tiny plankton to small fish. Living among the stinging tentacles are small, colorful clownfish. Why do the anemones not eat the clownfish? Because the clownfish attract the bigger prey to the death trap. In return, the clownfish live in a safe fortress. The amazing thing is that the colorful fish are not born immune to the anemone's sting. From when they are small, they must allow the anemone to sting them a little at a time until their bodies get used to the poison and the toxin no longer harms them. This eventually ensures a safe adulthood. Little fish need to do all they can to prevent falling prey to the bigger fish. Many of our ocean's marine species, from the tiniest of polyps to the largest of rays, find shelter and food on the coral reefs of the world. An empire so rich and diverse, it is one of nature's greatest creations. A magnificent underwater world that was started millions of years ago by a small coral polyp.